This next recap's going to be relatively brief, but it's one that we have to discuss from Sunday at Monmouth Park. This was the field of 6 that went postward for the Pegasus Stakes for 3-year-olds, the local prep race for the Haskell Invitational. No surprise, Maximum Security making his return to the races after the controversial disqualification in the Kentucky Derby. He is going to be an overwhelming favorite in a spot like this. To some people's surprise, though, especially the folks that bet him down to odds of 1-20, he did not win. King for a Day for Todd Pletcher gets the job done. Let's take a look at the stretch run of this year's Pegasus.
They've separated themselves by 5. Maximum Security all in toward the inside. King for a Day, a final furlong, greets Maximum Security, who's just a half length in front. King for a Day on the outside, going to make him earn it at the 16th pole. It's a question of who wants it more. King for a Day forges to a narrow advantage. Maximum Security has been defeated. King for a Day by a length. Maximum Security second, Direct Order was third, fourth, Last Judgment.
King for a Day, 5-1, is the winner with Joe Bravo aboard. Maximum Security, the horse that was disqualified from first in the Kentucky Derby, he finishes second at odds of 1-20. Let's take a look at King for a Day, 3 for 5 lifetime, 4 times in the money, over $210,000 in career earnings, owned and bred by Red Oak Stable, Brunetti in Kentucky. Trained by Todd Pletcher, ridden to victory by Joe Bravo, and the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. It's by Uncle Mo out of a French deputy mare named You Bet We Are Even. Respectable speed figures earned by each of these top 2 in here. King for a Day, a 102 buyer, 120 pace adjusted time form US rating, 118 raw. Maximum Security, a 100 buyer, 119 pace adjusted time form US rating, 117 raw. No disrespect to the connections involved with the other horses. I'm not talking about horses 3 through 6 here. Let's talk about the top 2. Let's begin with the winner. King for a Day. This is a horse that continues to blossom. He really, if you think about it, you go back to the way that he rounded out his 2-year-old campaign. It was the only time he's been off the board in any of his 5 lifetime starts. He finished 4th in the Kentucky Jockey Club at Churchill Downs. But if you go back and you watch that race, say what you will about that field, I don't love that race as a whole. And the horses that have exited it, hit or miss. But the way that King for a Day ran that day, that was a very impressive performance. Wide, close to the pace, it was hot, and he stuck around. I thought that was a good effort. Unfortunately, he was gone for some time, but he came back. He was impressive down at Pimlico. And then he does this. And again, the sort of time form ratings and the buyers, they more or less check out. They're pretty darn close. He finishes in 32 seconds flat as opposed to Maximum Security. He finishes in 32.19. Look, King for a Day, he's got that pedigree that I would think distance isn't going to be an issue for him. I'll be very curious to see where they go on with him. You would assume because it is down there on the Jersey Shore, you win this race, you assume you go to the Haskell. I think a lot of it will depend on what people think of Maximum Security exiting this race, because to me, the stumble, which has been discussed at the beginning of this race in the Pegasus, I don't think that made much of a difference. You lost by a full length. If you lost by a nose, maybe I could understand. But I think first time back off the bench, probably a little bit dull, misses the break a little bit, and I know the connections were saying he was a little bit keen, and whatever the case was, however you want to spin it. He missed the break. He bobbled. He righted the ship really quickly. Looked like he was in pretty deep water with about 3/8 of a mile to go, and that was in fact the case. Now, he didn't completely pack it in. And I think that just goes to show that, I mean, this is a very nice horse. I'm not breaking any news there with Maximum Security. I still think he's a little bit green. I said that coming out of the Derby. I said that's probably part of the reason that he did duck out. Maybe there was something else that happened on the infield or that caught his eye and made him do that. But, I mean, this is a horse that even in his races in Florida, he was not the consummate professional. He did some things a little bit on the goofy side. He's slightly raced. He's still figuring things out. I don't think the stumble is what cost him this race. I think he got beat by a horse that had a little bit more recency, that is a nice horse in his own right, goes out for good connections with Pletcher and Bravo. And you know what? It's not the end of the world if you lose a race. So many people get hung up in the idea of, and I get it, that technically he was not unbeaten coming into the Pegasus. But so many people get hung up on all those zeros and wanting to maintain perfection and all this other stuff. Well, you know what? It doesn't really matter when it boils down to it. Because Maximum Security now, if you think he's tighter and ready to go for the Haskell, he can very clearly, this Pegasus will be nothing more than a blip on the radar if he comes back and does what most people expect him to do or think he's capable of doing in the Haskell. If he goes out there and romps in, 4 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time, nobody's going to care what happened in the Pegasus. This is essentially, to me, nothing more than a means to an end. Don't really care that he lost, especially to what looks like a good horse in King for a Day. Now, had he lost to, a 35-1 shot, yeah, okay, maybe then we want to go back and revisit some things. But he lost to a nice horse, and he wasn't embarrassed. First start off the bench, I think he's going to move forward here. I think he's a player in the Haskell. But the reason I bring up King for a Day is because if you think Maximum Security is going to move forward, and I understand that you're not going to dodge this horse, you just beat him head to head. I wonder if you see a horse like this end up at Saratoga to run in the Jim Dandy. Keep in mind, the Jim Dandy and the Haskell are basically on the same weekend. One is on Saturday, and actually the Haskell might be Saturday this year. I'm not entirely sure, but at any event, you're not going to run in both of them. You're going to run in one or the other. More money to be made in the Haskell, but if you're looking at the Travers, it's sort of the long-term goal for these 3-year-olds, or for some of them anyways, the Travers, some folks like to have the local prep and the Jim Dandy. I'd be curious to see where all these horses go. Again, Maximum Security, I would be stunned if he wasn't in the Haskell. King for a Day, you would assume the Haskell is the next logical spot. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw him in the Jim Dandy up at Saratoga getting ready for the Travers, but we'll find out. We have some time before then and now, or between then and now. And we have some other horses that still need to sift, kind of figure some things out. We talked about the older horses when we went over that Stephen Foster recap. These 3-year-olds, now you're going to add King for a Day to the mix. The water gets muddier and muddier. It's not getting clearer and clearer. You can say who you think is the most talented, but as far as credentials are concerned and accolades, who the hell knows? King for a Day with the upset over Maximum Security in the Pegasus, the local stepping stone for the Haskell in a few weeks' time. Now, as I said at the top of the show, we'll go through. There won't be any replays as far as the stakes montage, so it's not much of a montage. It's going to be some quick hits and some thoughts about the remainder, put them together, it's remainder, what's left over of the graded stakes races from Churchill Downs, as well as the grade 3 affirmed from out at Santa Anita. So let's go and discuss those races.